Hello and welcome to this month AFD Meet the Expert webcast series. My name is Claudia Bolognesi and I will be your host today. Our webcasts are brought to you by our suppliers network of experts and aim at empowering businesses like yours with timely education, practical tips, and trusted guidance. The format of the webcast is very simple, just about 30 minutes of learning, followed by 15 minutes of open questions in the chat. The chat is located at the bottom of your screen, so please feel free to add them at any time during the presentation. Please note that the webcast is being recorded. Today's webcast is the roadmap to employee retention, and it is presented by Griffin Shea, Director of Partnership at Sprocket, and proud supporting member of the AFD. And now just a little bit about Sprockets. Sprocket's hiring solution automatically sources and identifies which applicants are the best match for specific roles and location, empowering users to build a strong and cohesive staff that will stay long-term. In real time, both hiring manager and applicants are notified when a match occurs, enabling both parties to take the next step. AFD members enjoy a 20% discount, so make sure to take advantage of this great benefit. And with that, I'd like to introduce you to Griffin Shea, who will take it from here.
And can you guys see this okay, Claudia? Thumbs up?
Yes, we do.
Okay, perfect. Thanks again, everyone, for allowing me the time this morning. As Claudia mentioned, I'm the Director of Partnerships here at Sprockets, and what we're really going to be talking about right now, for the next 20, 30 minutes is employee retention, right? The roadmap to employee retention. So, it's really difficult, I think, in general. Hiring is not easy, even if you've got decades of experience. It's really difficult to identify the right people, and it's very difficult to retain the right people. But retention doesn't just start at once they're hired, right? I think there's a common misconception that once someone's hired, it's what happens after they're hired that leads to them leaving, right? Where it actually begins at the beginning, right? It begins at the recruiting phase and at the beginning of staffing phase, right? Having the right management in place in the first place can go a long way as well. So what we're going to kind of talk through is kind of the key to that roadmap. As I mentioned, it begins at recruiting, right? So we're talking about making sure we find the right people, how we present ourselves in the organization or the company as well goes a long way, into onboarding, right? They need to have a positive onboarding experience. That is sometimes the first time that they're actually coming into the business, or the location is during that onboarding. So, onboarding needs to be done, clearly, right? We need to make sure everyone knows what to expect during that process, both beforehand and then during it, right? And then next up, managing, right? So once they're an employee, how do we manage them? How do we drive productivity? How do we drive engagement? Making sure that not only are the employees having the best experience, but having the proper employees that know what they're doing also leads to better customer experience as well. So making sure we're driving productivity there. And then lastly, how do we improve, right? So things like exit interviews, learning from mistakes. We are all going to make hiring mistakes. I have made numerous in the past. But how do we learn from the mistakes, and how do we have more hits than misses, right? And so at the end, what I'll do is kind of give a little detail about Sprockets, how we help in the area as well. So as I mentioned, recruiting, right? This is really where it starts. That first time you put a job posting out on the internet, on an Indeed or a ZipRecruiter, or if it's a now hiring sign with a QR code, at the location. But that job posting, that job description that you have, whether it's online or in person, that is somebody's first introduction to the company and the organization, right? That is their first impression, and needs to be obviously concise. It needs to be positive, right? Your job description needs to make it sound like a place where somebody wants to work. And, right now, unemployment is very low, which is great, right? We never want unemployment to be high, but low unemployment is very difficult on business owners and operators because people have a lot of options, right? And if they don't enjoy working for you, or maybe your job description doesn't stand out enough, or maybe it's not clear what the salary or pay is, then they're just going to move along to the next job description or job opening that is clear about pay, right? That does, have exclamation points and emojis and things that we may think are silly, but they go a long way to attract the right candidates, right? So be concise, be positive, be upfront about pay and about culture, right? Be transparent, because right now technology, unfortunately, it makes it so easy to apply to 6, 8, 10 jobs in a sitting just right on your phone, that if you're not transparent about working at the organization, other groups are, and they're just going to skip over, right? Use general neutral language as well, right? Very important. And then try and keep those descriptions, as concise as you possibly can. So everyone has kind of short attention spans these days, right? So, having a long 300, 400, 500 word description of the job opening, people aren't going to read through it, right? Particularly when they're applying on their phone or kind of on the go. So would definitely advise making it short, making it sweet, right? Hit the highlights, and then some of those more kind of intricate details about working there, that can always be done on that first phone call, right? Or maybe it's that first phone interview, or whether they're in face-to-face, right? That's really when you can get on into the details. But first and foremost, you really just want to paint an excellent picture of who you are as an organization and what it's like to work there. Use effective assessments, right? So Sprockets gets kind of grouped into this, assessment category. But assessments, whether it's Sprockets or whether it's, another tool out there, are very, very effective. Because frankly, it is really hard, particularly if you're hiring in the hourly space. That's typically a shorter hiring cycle. You don't necessarily speak to references or get as much background information. And so it is really important to get as good of an understanding of who someone actually is as quickly as you can in the process. I think, most people that have been involved in hiring before have kind of had the wool pull over their eyes in a way, where maybe you're interviewing someone or you look at their resume and you're so excited for them to start. They look like such a great fit. They're going to get along well. And then they show up and, day 2, day 10, in the back of your mind, you're kind of thinking, well, what happened to the lovely young woman or lovely young man that I interviewed that I thought was going to be a great fit? They seem to be, almost the total opposite, right? People can put on kind of a good show in order to get a job. People do it all the time. But utilizing assessments and a tool, like a Sprockets, you'll be able to kind of cut through the noise and really identify who these individuals are and whether or not they're the right fit. Offering competitive benefits, right? So things like flexible schedules, childcare, tuition reimbursement, performance bonuses. Now, obviously, depending on what industry you're in and what business you run, some of these options may not really be viable for you guys. But, having something else aside from just kind of your basic salary can go a long way and attract really quality individuals. And then also that can make it harder for them to leave, right? And we'll kind of get into, a little bit more of the management and retention and things like that. I would say a big thing here too, and sometimes it's very hard to do, particularly for businesses that maybe, don't get enough applicants, or maybe you're in a rural area and you just kind of have to throw warm bodies at the problem. But if you can, try and avoid just hiring anyone that applies. it does seem like a short fix. And in some instances, you have to, right? If you want to keep the store open for specific hours or keep the business open. But the issue of just hiring anyone who applies, just throwing warm bodies at it, actually creates a larger problem than just being unstaffed. Because now what happens is, first and foremost, that costs money, right? So the cost to replace an employee, or kind of that turnover cost, can depend on the industry, but when you factor in recruiting costs, orientation, lost productivity, everything that goes into that turnover, it can be expensive. Depending on the industry, it's a couple $1,000s to replace an employee. So if you make the wrong hiring decision by just saying, oh, great, I got an applicant, I'm going to have them start, it's going to actually end up costing you and affecting your bottom line, and now puts you into this vicious cycle that not only is time consuming, but really expensive, where you're hiring for the same position over and over and over again. And if it is the wrong fit, they're not going to last, right? They're just going to leave. And then lastly, with recruiting, make that posting stand out as much as you can. So if you put yourself in an applicant's shoes, and I'm on a LinkedIn, or I'm on an Indeed or a ZipRecruiter, and I'm looking at all these different job openings and offerings, make it stand out, right? Make sure that in the job title and the description, it says things that catch their eye and makes them want to work there, right? Very important to kind of stick out from the competition. So onboarding, right? Kind of the next step in the process. You've got the right people in place. Now you're getting them going. So tips with onboarding: you want to make sure that the onboarding experience is as quick and as painless as possible. You need to provide a positive experience there. The first 2-3 months are absolutely crucial with the new hire's success. And that, really isn't industry dependent. That's among all industries, right? That first couple days, first couple weeks, that is going to set the foundation of whether or not that employee is going to end up being the right fit and sticking around. Make sure that you provide whatever resources are necessary. It's really difficult, and I've had this happen to me before, where I start a job and you're just kind of looking around waiting for someone to, tell you what to do or explain how things work. Make sure that they have all the resources that they need in order to, really hit the ground running, which is very important, right? That first couple of weeks is absolutely crucial to long-term success. With that too, introduce them to the team, right? It's one of these things right now where company culture is now more important than ever. As I talked about at the beginning, with low unemployment, people don't like the folks they work with or don't like the managers, they can just leave. There's a lot more job openings. So making sure that they're introduced to the team, you can do little things like meet your new team member, right? Maybe in the wall in the back, or depending what type of business you have. And we always do this as an organization, and sometimes it's a little awkward, but it's a great way for me to get a really good understanding of who someone else is that's in a different department. So we'll do things like, have the new team member answer, 4 or 5 questions about themselves. And it can be small things about, hey, where'd you grow up? Or what's your favorite movie? What show are you watching right now, right? What's your favorite place you've ever been on vacation? Just small little questions like that then their team members get to see their responses, whether it's written or whether it's on a call, what have you. Now it can start a conversation between team members, right? So if someone were to say, oh, I grew up in, Maryland, I'd immediately in my head say, oh, yeah, me too. Maybe I send them a message, right? Maybe we jump on a call. Maybe, next time the organization's together, we sit next to each other and talk about that, right? And then now we create more of kind of this team environment. So making sure that, you do small things like that so that the team member feels welcome and learns more about the people they're working with. Also, encourage them to ask questions, right? What you don't want to have happen is, and some people are, particularly these days, more and more people are a little bit more introverted, right? There are a lot of things that go into why. But it is the case, right, where people just aren't as comfortable being as outgoing as maybe they were in the past. And so encourage them to ask questions, right? Make sure that they feel welcome, and that they have all the information that they need. Make a path to advancement in their career, right? So this may be more difficult for some of you than others, depending on your business, depending on your industry. But if you're able to, offer opportunities for promotion, that can go a long way. And so one of the things that we always kind of talk about is hiring internally in terms of moving people up from one role into maybe a management position or a director position. So I think when you do that, if you can, rather than hiring from the outside, then what you do is you paint a picture to the other employees that were maybe in that position that, hey, if I work really hard, Sarah turned into a manager, or Sarah's now the director, and she started in my position. If I work my butt off and do everything en masse, maybe that's next for me, right? People want these days to apply and work for a career, not necessarily just a job, right? So if you are able to make that advancement very clear and upfront, and then provide training, right? So making sure that the employee is comfortable with everything that they need to do from an operations standpoint, boost that productivity, boost that engagement, and make sure that they just have the resources necessary and at hand in order to flourish from day one. So the next step is management, right? This is very important. What I would say too, before we kind of go into this, is making sure that you have the right management in place is very important. So again, this depends on kind of the setup of your operation. Maybe you yourselves, small business owners, you are the managers themselves, in which case you can't really do anything here to help it. But having a manager in place and having the right manager in place, I think can go a very long way. Because what can happen is if you have a manager that is very difficult to work for, you could have brought in 3 or 4 amazing employees, but they're still going to leave and they're going to churn if that manager and those employees don't get along well, right? And they don't share the same values and traits and things like that. So making sure that you have the right management in place is absolutely key. Hopefully you do. And if you do, then, things like this can be very, very important. So perform quarterly and annual reviews, tracking their progress, and provide performance feedback. So this can be, a little bit easier depending on what industry you're in, depending on what data you kind of capture for those employees. But regardless of what industry you're in, letting them know how they're doing is really important. Just checking in with them and asking, hey, how's it going? I know you started 45 days ago. How's everything going there? What do you enjoy most working here? Right? Maybe what are some things that you could change? So just keeping up and maintaining those clear lines of communication goes a very long way and enables people to not feel like they're out on an island. What I would say too is by maintaining clear lines of communication, one of the things that you can do, particularly if you do have an HR team as well, is you can give them a clear avenue to kind of voice complaints or maybe some issues that they have, which can prevent them from airing those grievances to maybe some other employees, which can then help kind of create a negative culture, right? So if an employee has something that they would like to kind of get off their chest, or maybe something that they think could go better at the job or in the office or what have you, giving them an opportunity to say so either to you or to the HR staff or maybe their manager is much better and much more preferable than them doing so to another employee, right? Because then that other employee may agree with them. Now you've got a handful of employees that aren't as happy and have questions than rather one. Right. So make it clear that their voice matters and maintain those open lines of communications. And then offer some flexibility, right? Now, some of you, again, more flexibility to do this than others, depending on the industry you're in. But employees now are seeking kind of that healthier work-life balance if they're able to. So if you're able to be flexible on some areas, particularly scheduling, that can go a very long way. And then, another thing too with managing as well is, and you may not be able to do this depending on the type of business you operate, but creating little things like bonuses or prizes or spiffs based on performance that is outside of just their standard salary can really go a long way as well. So one of the things that I've always done, and I've managed, 4 or 5 different kind of sales teams, both entry level and senior level at this point, is, people are already going to work as hard as they're going to for their salary. But if there's something fun we can do that is, hey, if we can all accomplish this as a team by X date, everyone gets whatever the prize is, or maybe an extra hour off or a gift card or whatever that would be. It sounds like something that is very small, but at the end of the day, in a lot of exit interviews that I've had with some of my people, some of the things that they've loved the most are those times where we've said, hey, this week, if anyone, closes these amount of deals or does this, we all get to go to happy hour as a team or whatever that would be, dinner on us or dinner on the CRO. In those instances, people do really kind of fight together as a team and create a really healthy environment. So just something to kind of consider as well if you're able to. With that, if you have mentors available, that's great. Whether it's yourself maybe, or maybe someone more senior in the organization, they can really benefit from that. And just kind of learning about maybe where, you started, right? Maybe now you own a couple franchises or you own one, but maybe you started as a cashier or as a manager at one of the locations. You hear those stories all the time and they're great to hear. And also, if I'm someone in their shoes, that can go a really long way. It's important to have people to look up to. And some people really don't, right? So having professional mentors can be very, very important and can really help some people. Gradually increasing responsibilities. So making sure that, from day one, as we talked about, they're comfortable. But then as you move along, if you notice maybe they're getting bored with the day-to-day, maybe we can throw some other things on their plate, right? Creating that more fast-paced environment and providing the support can really help them flourish as well. And then recognizing accomplishment. 38% of employees consider recognition to be the most important factor for their success, which means that, essentially 38% of employees really kind of do it for the recognition, right? Particularly and depending on what job you have, where it may be really difficult to accomplish your goal. And when it is, it can be pretty deflating if you think you do something that is, worth admiration or worth a comment and you don't get it, right? That can then kind of negatively affect your thoughts of the business. So recognizing accomplishment, whether that's individually or to the organization as a whole, right? Hey, Griffin was able to do this week, congratulations. Or just a quick, letting someone know, hey, we saw that you did this. We really appreciate it. We love having you work here. So just small things, recognizing accomplishment. And then kind of the last step in the roadmap is how do we improve, right? So exit interviews, I think, are very important and something that, sometimes difficult to do. There are now, technologies and things like that will help with exit interviews. But I think they are very crucial because unless you identify the areas of weakness that are helping lead to, low retention and high turnover, you're not going to be able to improve them, right? So in a scenario where a business, and maybe this is kind of what I was talking about, where maybe your manager to you that's running the store or running the business or running your sales team or what have you seems perfect, right? You get along well with them really well. You think they're great, their experience really tied up. But if you never speak to any of those employees that are leaving, you may not find out things about that employer or that manager that are leading to the turnover and retention, right? So if you don't do an exit interview, you may not find out that the training wasn't up to snuff, that maybe the people started on day one and had their hands in the air. I have no idea what I'm doing here. Or maybe that the manager was, really difficult to deal with, right? Expect them to be in an hour early and stay an hour late, just unreasonable expectations. So if you don't ask and try and find out what the issues are, then you're not going to be able to improve yourself and as a business. Some of the reasons and the top reasons people quit, lack of appreciation. We talked about just not getting any sort of feedback, whether that's positive or, negative, but in general, need some kind of feedback, right? Need people to know whether or not they're doing the right job. Excessive workload, poor workplace culture. So that's very big. And something I'll talk about here as I kind of briefly go over how Sprockets works. That is big these days. Having company culture, as I talked about, if they don't like the environment they're in and the people they work with and the people they work for, they're just going to leave and find another job, right? Which speaks to kind of that bad management. And then changes in their personal life. So, you have people that leave the business that were a great fit just because things happen, right? Maybe, something happened in their family and they had to get a different job that, they love the job they're at, but they needed something that pays more because maybe they have medical bills, right? Or we've got student loans to deal with, or something happened in their personal life and maybe they're moving. So it's really important to get a good understanding of when someone leaves the organization, exactly why, so that you can then pivot and make the adjustments as necessary. So this kind of roadmap to retention, right? One of the things that I talked about that I think is absolutely crucial for this is getting the right people in place in the first place, right? If you really want to retain people, there's only so much you can do if you don't have the right recruiting process, if your onboarding process isn't great either, then managing and improving is going to be very difficult. And at that point, it may be too late to retain some of these employees. So how do you hire the right people in the first place? That is what our technology can do. And there are technologies out there that can really help with this in a matter of different ways. But the way that Sprockets works is very high level. We enable businesses to identify, hire, and retain more employees that are just like their best. With us, it's proven to reduce time spent on hiring, minimize operating costs through improved employee retention, and reduce sourcing bills. So very quickly, kind of how it works. Every business, when you ask them, hey, who are your top, call it 3 employees, people always know and can rattle them off the top of their head, right? Regardless of what industry it's in. They are those individuals that in a perfect world, you just want to quickly find more of them, right? And that is what we enable you guys to do. So how you do that in order to hire more great people like your best? First, we just need to quickly understand what makes your top people so great. So we have them answer a quick 3-question survey. The survey itself is open-ended and actually designed to elicit a thoughtful and an organic response. So your top 3 employees at a location fill out this questionnaire. The questions themselves are things like, describe the best day of your life. If you could go on vacation, where would it be and why? So they each spend about 3 minutes filling that out. And then the minute they hit submit, that is where our technology gets to work. And that is really the magic of Sprockets. So combining psychology and technology, utilizing natural language processing, what our technology is able to do is analyze those responses, looking at things like their word choice, punctuation, syntax, emoji use, spacing, everything that goes into those written responses. It analyzes it and breaks them down into 55 different personality traits, needs, and values. So essentially what it's doing is it is determining what your top people share and have in common, what's made them tick, what has allowed them to be so successful in your business, and then builds a unique benchmark for now all incoming applicants to be compared to. So you add that same 3-question survey to the application process. If you have an online application, great. If you get walk-ins, they can do it via QR code, but the survey itself is just a basic hyperlink. So when applicants come in, they fill out those same 3 questions, and then a couple different things are going to happen. First, one of the things that we firmly believe in is time to contact. It's really important to contact applicants very quickly because, as I talked about, it's so easy to apply to a dozen jobs at once that if you don't get in touch with them, within minutes or a couple hours of them applying, they're probably never going to answer, right? And some of you out there right now are probably thinking, oh yeah, I get ghosted by 80% of people that apply. That's very common. So what happens with us is we leverage automation to kind of eliminate that challenge. So what happens is an applicant comes in, depending on how well they score, in other words, how similar they are to your top employees, we will send out multiple notifications. First and foremost, going to you or the hiring manager, letting you know, hey, you just got an applicant that scored a 9.2 out of 10. And then with click to call capability, you can be on the phone with them within seconds or minutes of them applying. What we will also do is, depending on how well they score, we'll also notify the applicant themselves, letting them know, hey, Griffin, we know you just applied for a job at company X, Y, and Z. You're a great cultural fit and will get along well with the other employees. Here's the hiring manager's contact information. So we're really matching the applicant with the business. Call it applicant matching. So by identifying both parties, letting them know that they're a really good fit, it's going to speed up your hiring process, allow you to get in touch with people more often, and then also it's going to allow you to stick out from the competition. So again, what we're doing here is kind of taking it back. It's really hard to know whether or not someone is the right fit and is going to thrive with your business. But through Sprockets, now you're getting deeper insights into who someone is as an individual, their mental makeup, and what's between the ears. So we are going to save a lot of time and accelerate the hiring process, remove kind of the guesswork, and accurately predict success as well. And then lastly, just kind of what we see in terms of results. So with us, our lead indicator of success is 90-day retention, right? Those first 90 days are absolutely crucial. So on average, our users see a 43% improvement in 90-day retention and a 22% reduction in annual turnover. So you can see here all these different case studies. It's time saved, right? 15 hours a week for Ricky Brockett's, one of our Bojangles franchisees, saw a 51% in 90-day improvement in 90-day retention. One of our KFC franchisees actually was able to achieve 100% staffing levels for the first time since pre-pandemic, and they were able to do so in the first 6 months. As I touched on, at the beginning, this hiring for the same position over and over and over again is time consuming. It's also very expensive, right? So that turnover cost, recruiting cost, orientation, lost productivity, all that factors in. So Spinks, which is a convenience store chain down here in the Southeast or South Carolina, able to save over $126,000 annually just by improving turnover, reducing retention, or improving retention. And then lastly, an equitable screening process. So if you were to go online, look at our mission statement, a big thing with us is creating a more equitable hiring process. So unfortunately, there is a lot of subjectivity involved in hiring, right? People are looked over for a lot of different reasons. But when you utilize Sprockets as kind of that first screening tool, now all I'm doing is seeing what they score out of 10 and whether or not they're the right fit. I don't care what their name is. I don't care what their gender is, any of that. I just know that they're the right fit for us. We're going to reach out and talk to them. And so in doing that, there is no mean difference in terms of someone's age, race, or gender and how they, score on Sprockets, right? So a very big thing for us and something that, we're pretty proud of as an organization as well. So thank you guys so much. That's kind of really all I had from a slide perspective. I know we have some questions as well and some time for that. So looking forward to answering those.
Well, thank you, Griffin. It was great. Personally, I can relate a lot to what you said. Having, being an independent, an employee, one thing that actually really caught my attention was like for small business owners, or at least for someone like me, it's like I know who I want to hire, but I don't know necessarily how to put it into words, And I
Yeah.
like that process of that questionnaire that, yeah, you can answer. It kind of puts it together for you. Okay, this is the type of candidate that you're looking for. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's exactly what I'm looking for. I just didn't know how to say it, or how to put it into words, which for some people might come as super easy. For other people, especially small business owners that are, I don't know, maybe they're juggling and have many hats, is not as straightforward. So that said, I think you covered a lot of the questions, a lot of the things that uh, you know were asking the question. But I'm gonna read you a few of the questions that came in during the registration. Please feel free to add additional questions in the little question and ask little chat, if you have them, if he hasn't answered them already. So one of the questions that came in earlier today was, how do you retain part-time employees?
Yeah, so good question. So I think, all those things that we talked about, whether it's part-time or full-time, some of them aren't necessarily going to be applicable if it's part-time, right? And particularly now with the gig economy, right? People are getting kind of picking up shifts everywhere. But it's still really important to hire the right people in the first place, right? I think particularly if it is part-time, because if it is full time, you may get people that are going to stick around just because they really need the job. Whereas if it's part time, they're really only going to stick around because they enjoy being there, or else they'll just pick up another part time job. So I think it's really important to, utilize something, like a Sprockets, where you're able to identify whether or not that person is the right fit in terms of their personality and their mental makeup. Um, because if they just have a lot more opportunities out there. So part-time as well, I think it depends on kind of the industry you'd be in. But I think it's really important to make sure that you have the right structure in place so that when you bring the right people in, they have that training, right? They have that onboarding, and that it can be, done pretty quickly.
Yes. Another question that came in, and you basically this presentation was all about it, but I'm going to read it anyway. And it says, how does one go about creating a work culture that employees will not want to leave?
Yeah, so definitely something, we touched on. I think it's really important to, step back and be empathetic in terms of putting yourself in someone else's shoes and their experience. Sometimes it's difficult to do, particularly if you're managing a business or you own a business, right? It's hard to kind of put yourself in the shoes of someone that is maybe joining at that entry level. But, having that culture in place is huge. It starts with having the right people in place. I myself have stuck around for jobs longer than I really liked because I loved the manager I was working for.
Yeah.
Then I vice versa, right? Where I worked for the managers and one job in particular, I absolutely love working the company, and then they switched managers around, and I immediately didn't like working there anymore.
Yeah.
So having the right management in place is key. And again, I think those little things like having them introduce themselves to the team, getting to know one another, whether it's weekly or monthly or quarterly check-ins, depending on the industry, just keeping that communication up is really important. And sometimes it can see the difference.
That you just don't become like a ghost in the organization. And no, I get it. I agree with you. Another question that came in is, how does one measure employee satisfaction?
Yeah, so in terms of measuring employee satisfaction, there are a couple ways about this, and there are a lot of really good technologies out there that can do just this. So right now, I'm trying to think. I know we use something internally. I think it's called 15.5. But if you look up, there are a lot of different tools out there that you can easily add, and they're pretty cheap as well. That can be, surveys and things like that that will measure employee satisfaction. So I would definitely utilize technology if you can particularly if you're understaffed and maybe you don't have an HR team, then utilize technology. If you do have kind of the management or HR staff in place, then you can kind of come up with your own surveys, right? You can find some examples online about employee satisfaction, kind of those standard questions of, you may not want to do on a scale of very sad face to very happy face, just because people, I think, tend to always kind of be in the middle some there. So I think written responses, I think you're going to get a more accurate picture of someone's satisfaction rather than just scale of 1 to 5, just because of human nature. But I would definitely utilize technology if you can, if you have the ability to, and then particularly if you're understaffed.
Yeah. Yes. And one question coming from me, curiosity, is does Sprockets have measure of salaries or pay base in the market to compare, or states? Does they offer any of that measurement?
Yeah, good question. So really kind of the main features of Sprockets are that applicant matching technology, and then what we call Sprockets pools, which can help get more applicants in. So that is really kind of our main focus, is the applicant funnel and identification of who someone is from a mental makeup standpoint. Now, with regards to salary, one of the things that we can do, or one of the things that we always offer, part of what you get with us is a dedicated customer success rep. So an actual individual that'll get you set up, and then they'll be your kind of point of contact. And one of the things that they do is they will actually do a lot of the job postings and titles and descriptions for the businesses we work with. And so they actually have a really good understanding and kind of best practices about, what to post, and then also salaries, depending on the role and kind of in the area. And it is in a scenario where if you're not using a Sprockets, I would definitely recommend kind of looking up, because you can actually look up that information.
Yeah.
I know there are multiple technologies that do that.
Yes. Yes.
Like PayScale is one, I believe, where you really kind of look at, in your region for this role, what do other people kind of pay?
Okay.
So if you're using Sprockets, we can certainly help our customer success team. If not, utilize other technologies, or frankly, go snoop around, right? Go on Indeed, type in whatever you're hiring for, see what other people are paying.
Yeah. Well, that's great that you mentioned customer support, because I was actually wondering about that there is going to be that actual human interaction, and it's not just a cloud-based service, but there is a level of, support that you can talk to real people as Sprockets. So that's wonderful.
Yep.
These are all the questions that we have. We are about 9:45 West Coast. Would you like to, add anything else? Otherwise, I think we can, call it a day.
Yeah, absolutely. If anyone is interested in, learning more, happy to obviously talk through. Claudia, I think my information is available on the AAFD website.
Yes.
So my email address, phone number.
Yes.
Feel free to reach out, whether you're interested or just you have a question, right? Happy to jump on a call or help in any way I can.
Yeah.
Whether it's related or not. So
yeah, and again, AFD member gets a 20% off, Sprocket services, which it's a great saving. So there is a dedicated landing page that members can click in and start the process of, I would assume, just to get rolling. Then, somebody at Sprockets will, reach out to, I don't know if it's like creating an account at first or whatever, but we'll make sure that, our members, are very well aware that, the offer is there, Sprockets is there, that you are there to support them and your team. So with that, thank you, Griffin. This was wonderful. I've learned a lot. Hiring is always frightening, at least, on both sides. So I feel like, oh, okay, so maybe, there is an easy way to do it. So I'm very excited about it. And I thank everybody for coming and joining us today. This webcast is recorded, so we will make it also available in a couple of days through our member portal only, and you'll get notified for that. We have another webcast coming up in August, which is about cybersecurity. So I will encourage also to look at that one. And with that, again, have a great day, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you, Griffin.
Thanks so much.